Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Lamed Ches Seif Gimel. We're talking about Hashmas Kol, making noises on Shabbos and lots of related halachas. Says the Mechaber in Seif Gimel, Zug HaMekashkesh L'Shois. You've got like a clock which makes a noise on the hour, like a grandfather clock, something like that. Also, Al Yedei Mishkalos with weights. Mutzah La'archa V'La'achinu B'Yijayim. You're allowed to set it up before Shabbos, Kadesh Yelech V'Yekashkesh Kol Shabbos. That it rings a noise on Shabbos. So grandfather clocks on Shabbos are allowed. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Zuk HaMekashkesh L'Shois, Rotzolema, Meira HaShois, Shekerin Zeiga, She'osu La'ashmiya Kol Hediya HaShois, that it makes a noise to announce, to sort of declare that it's gone. Every time, every hour passes, you're allowed to do that. If you take a look at 14, now that's at the back of the Sefer, I think. Sorry, no, it's not. It's over here. Now, even if it plays a tune, right? So even a clock which is going to play a tune or something, at that point, that would also be allowed. We'll see about alarm clocks soon. Yudalad. Sivkot Nudalad, Mutzah La'archa. So you're allowed to set it up before Shabbos. We're not worried that people will suspect that you set this up on Shabbos. Everyone knows that that's how this thing operates, and therefore there's not a concern. Now, what about an alarm clock on Shabbos? If you take a look at 15, if it's a very loud ring that the whole house is going to hear it, everyone outside of his bedroom, there are other people in nearby bedrooms. Says Ramesha, if it's going to cause a real ruckus, it's going to cause a very loud noise throughout the house, that is a problem of Avsham Milsa, because the normal way of doing it is before you go to bed, you set it up, you set your alarm for the next day. And there's a shayla of Marasayan that people will think that you've set this up on Shabbos. However, that's a Orach, Shlomo Zalman says there's no problem with it, and I think the minhag ha'olam is to do that. And even according to Ramesha, if people know that you've set it up before Shabbos, or if it doesn't go beyond your bedroom, it's just in your room, which hopefully will be the case, then therefore it wouldn't be a problem. And I encourage kids in school to set their alarms Friday nights, because otherwise, you'll see them Shabbos mincha with a bit of luck. So certainly Shlomo Zalman allows it, and even Ramesha, if it goes just in that room, or if you tell people that you set it up before Shabbos, then that would take away lechor from the Marasayan. Okay, let's finish off Mishnah Berurah. Says Mishnah Berurah Tesvav, Avol b'Shabbos lo miboyadim omad also lachin sheilech. You can't set it up on Shabbos, this grandfather clock, that it's going to keep going. Now, I'm not sure exactly how the mechanics of the grandfather clock, but even if you pull this string or something, that it's going to go. Because sometimes it's only operative by you pulling the string, so you've actually fixed it. So there's a problem of tikkun mana. Even if the grandfather clock is still going, also you can't pull the weights. I think that's how it all operates. But tashin ur galgalim. Yeah, what is tashin ur? Shan kiss, like a pocket watch. Shelo yifsek hiluchay. Won't stop going. So if it's still operating, then you're allowed to keep going. But unless you can't do any of this, unless there's a pressing need, for example, there's a tzorech, there's a chola, and if it's still going, so therefore there's less of a problem of tikkun mana. The watch is still operating. But you want to change it a little bit or something like that. If it's difficult to find an en Yehudin, it's still operating, then there is grounds to rely on. And if there is a non-Jewish person around, then you can get him to organize it for the benefit of as a chayla, even if it's stopped. Because once it's stopped, you've got much more of a problem of tikkun mana. Now this is an interesting case. There are some watches which they sort of, you wind them up, as it were, by actually movement. I think even today you have I don't know what they're called, movement watches. So, what's it called? Automatic. Okay, so you got to be careful not to move these things on Shabbos. Now, if you look at 20, he gives you a bit more detail. V'shan yad, it's just on this page. V'shan yad she'orach es atzma al yedei tunos hayad. If you've got a watch which is sort of it operates by way of movement of the hands. If it's stopped and then you wearing it and moving your arm is going to activate it and therefore fix it, then you've got a problem wearing it on Shabbos. But if it's currently working, then you're allowed to move it. Because it's working right now. And therefore it's not considered broken, and therefore you're just keeping it going, and therefore that's not a problem. You're just extending its lifespan, its functionality. Which you're doing anyway, you're just walking. etc. So I remember, so a guy came to me some months ago and asked me this question. He's got I don't know what it's called, a watch which operates, it needs movement, and it has stopped. So this is exactly the point. Once it's stopped, you can't use it now because you're moving it, it's going to reactivate it. That's tikkun mona. But if it's still operating, then the Shlomo Zalman says it's okay because you're not doing it. It's not called mekulkul, even though you're sort of extending its longevity, its operation. That would be okay. Fine. Yeah. All right. Let's go weiter. Dalet. Hameshame perosav uzrav mipnei chayav ha'oif. Lo yisbet. Now you're guarding your fruit. And your seeds from animals, from birds. You can't clap your hands, or slap your thighs, or dance, like a moving scarecrow. Chazal made the gezerah that you might come to break off a branch and throw it at the animals. So you gotta be careful. If you've got a field, even in your back garden, to shoo away the birds by clapping or by shouting at them or something like that. You got to be careful because it could be caught by Gzer Shemitot Tzur v'yizreik lohem. It says in Mishnah Berurah Tezayin v'lo yirakeh. It's beregel not to dance to shoo away the birds. Lashmiya kol lahaves ha'oifos. You can't do that. V'yizreik lohem l'shus rabim. V'lo poskim t'zman hazeh lekem l'shus rabim. After the shor b'chol zeh. Now it could be that according to poskim who say that nowadays we haven't really got a rishus rabim, all of this would be okay. It's a Gzer l'gzeri because the whole thing is a Gzer l'gzeri. Maybe you'll come to break off a branch, and you're going to throw the branch. And even if you throw the branch, you're not going to do hitzah. So it's a gezer l'gezer. V'chol shkein l'sapik kaf al kaf, but l'kalachayad b'vadei shar l'kula alma. To clap your hands in an irregular way, sort of like that we've spoken about. That it would be okay. L'kula alma ve'ein loch Hashem yitzal tzur. We're not worried you might come to break off a branch. So, if you've got a nice fruit tree in your garden and the birds are coming to it, so if you do some sort of shina, there's certainly grounds to rely on to shoo them away, and we're not chayshish that you might come to break a branch because it's, as the Mishnah Berurah says, it's gezerah l'gezerah, and it's quite far fetched. Okay, hey, ein sheichin be'egazim. You're not allowed to sort of play with nuts, or apples. It's like a game of marbles, and the problem is that you need a flat surface, and the concern is you might be meshavik gumos and level out the garden. But dafka al gabi karka, and dafka on ground, aval al gabi shulchan shari, to play these games on a table would be okay. To lekel a migzan sham mishum gumos, because there's no gezerah of gumos if you're dealing on a table. Umuta lischek ba'atzmos shekarin chich. You're allowed to play with bones and with pieces which are called shich. Afal pi shemashmiim. He says in the bottom, "Mischak ke'ein chomesh avonim." There is a game like that. You throw a thing, and you've got to catch and pick up some pieces. I can't remember what it's called in English. But these sort of games, afal pi shemashmiim kol, even though it could cause a noise, which is the theme of our simon. Hayel ve'ein mechavnen shir. Even though it makes a noise. You're in the way you play the game, you're not mechavim for the shir, and therefore it's not a problem. This is just playing a game. If you're playing for money, there's sort of almost like a gambling, or there's a winner takes a prize. Then it would be problematic, even betom v'chaser. So the Mishnah Berurah explains what that means. It's a game of odds or evens. You've got to guess if you've got 2 pebbles or 1 pebble, these sort of games. To have a kameka chomemka, because that is a bit business-like almost. But you don't have to protest if noshim or if ktanim are playing these games. Because otherwise, if you tell kids, certainly, they'll just press on anyway, and therefore they're going to be doing it b'mezid and not b'shegeg. Better just to keep quiet. But lischek b'kadur, and to play with the ball, ayin le'el simen shin ches if mem hey. Okay, says Mishnah Berurah Yud Ches, ein soichkin shemegalgin oison umakin zuezek derech shemesachkin hanaaris. You shouldn't play with marbles on an earth floor, because that's going to be meshavik gumos. Ashruvi gumos, says Mishnah Berurah Yud Ches, shayochin derech legalgal ha'egos, because that's when you roll the nut or the marble. That's the concern. Al gabi shulchan, v'uadin al gabi machatzeles or beged or tavla on a garment or something like that. V'lo gazrin b'chol ze oto al gabi karka to gezer legzeri. We're not worried that you don't play on a table, because you might come to play on the grass, because even if you play on the grass, you might come to Mishav Gumas, that's the Gezer Gezerah. Al Gabi Karka, but on the ground, even if it's paved, V'lo Shayach Hashav Gumas, Gam Kein Osa. The karka b'karka michel v'gazrin also karka she'enim murutzaf, and therefore, if it's outside or if it's on a path, on a paved surface, that would not be allowed. But on a table or on a beged or something like that, that would be okay. But atzomos v'nagin lasosin shel kesef, you do it made of silver shoe miyuchad in the Shabbos, designated especially for Shabbos, like a special pieces for Shabbos. Im lokein mechzik uvdu dechol u'maras sosin chelek usvirlei kimin she'ein to'eles b'yadias chochmas haschek hahu. There's no real chochma in this game. V'uadin kol min eschek and other similar games also. Af b'chol yizoy mishum meishav leitzim, because it's sort of it's a meishav leitzim. You're wasting time. Or k'meishav kosav simin shinzayin siv tesvov. V'ayim birkei Yosef shevi oid b'shem kama gedonim shechmir b'zeh. B'tam v'chos apirish grad a granda beloshen Ashkenaz. Now, the question is, what about playing other games? What about Monopoly and things like that on Shabbos? If you look at 25, he's got it. It's at the back on page 67. He says this. I'll read it to you. Don't worry if you haven't got it. V'legabe mischak monopol, which is Monopoly. Shemesachim b'kesef meduma. It's you're playing with fake money. Is that allowed? Since you're not playing with real money, we're not worried about playing it. We're not worried that it's it's like a business game where you're losing and winning. And therefore also he sides with Shlomo Zalman that it's actually okay and you don't have to prohibit it. It's just a game, people understand that it's not a problem. However, from a chinuch point of view, it's not a great idea to educate the kids that they should play these games, better they should play other games. But it's better that daddy doesn't play with, because it's okay for the kids. And I think Chaim in the Children Halacha quotes him, says the same thing. There are some games that the kids can play, but it's better that the father doesn't play when it involves fake money. Now, however, then he carries on a very important next paragraph. In a game where the standard way of playing is to write things down, and I think the classic example of that would be Scrabble. You've got to keep cheshbon, you've got to keep a score of what points people are on. And that's why games like Scrabble and things like that are caught by this. Okay, let's carry on. Vov. Also, lishoiv mayim begalgal. You're not allowed to draw water with a galgal, with some sort of chain or rope. We're worried that you might fill your garden or your ruin, or water, or soak your flax. So to draw water, if you haven't got those situations, then it will be okay. That it's only also if you're going to bring a lot of water up, and there's going to be a big tircha. V'hem galgalim akvuim bohem deloyim har besoviv. There's lots of buckets on this sort of pulley system. Aval galgalim shelonu. But our wells, we know, you just bring up a little bucket with water, muta, that would be okay. We're not worried about that. Says the Mishnah Burim, Sif Kotzen Chof Gimel, because you can do it easily, and therefore we somech on that. Zayin, Mishesh Leperis, Bereish Hagag, someone's got fruit at the top of the garden, at the top of his roof, I mean. The Raya Motze Shepon, he can see that the rain is coming. Also, L'Shashlam B'Shabbos Derech Aruba Shebegag, he can't lower the fruit down through the skylights. Avol Mutza L'Chasoisom, but you can cover the fruit. V'afilu Leveinim Shehem Muksim, even with bricks which are Muksim Mutza L'Chasoisom Mipnei Adelef, even those you've got those on your roof and you want to cover those, that would be allowed to prevent them from becoming spoiled. Also, L'Shashlam says the Mishnah Berurah Chafei, the Terech Shabbos, because it's an unnecessary tircha. Ha'Peiros L'Terech Hayom, sorry, but fruit you want to bring down for today, to bring down a few apples or whatever, that would be okay. They shouldn't get ruined. The Yam Shashlema is more machmir, ve'aviyah mogen Avram. Aveli Rabbi v'shar achreinim hechichuch mi'agmar demut, and therefore you can cover them. Sheim muksim could go in sheim suduros for emdes lebinyan. V'chanal b'simin shin ches if yudzayin. Mutzah lechasois now, but also the tatlan v'koyman af she'ein v'mal lechasois. You can't touch the bricks, but you can cover them. Let's just finish the siman. It'll take 1 minute. Ches mutzah litzen kli tachas haderef b'Shabbos. You're allowed to put a kli underneath the drip on Shabbos v'im nismali, and if it fills up, sheifchem achzir l'mkoyma, you can put it back and empty it and put it back. So long as the water is suitable for washing, also but if it's not, then you can't make a graf shari lechatchila. However, if the kli is dirty itself, and therefore you're never going to wash with this water, then you're allowed to move it because you can get rid of a graf shal rei. Says the Mishnah Berurah Tachas Adelef Shadei Derech HaTikra Chiyetzi V'Zeh L'Rechitza De'ein Al Hamotza Hayerid Shem Muksa Oneilad, because the water that's coming down hasn't got a Shem Muksa Oneilad. V'Yochel L'Shteisa L'Irchas Men, if it's a clean kli, then you're allowed to drink it, and therefore it's okay. V'Adinim Hu Roi Rak L'Shtias Behema. Also Mishum She'ein Pira She'ein Oisin Dova She'imois Al Semech She'yeh Mutza Ach Kach L'Tzia K'Graf Shari. You can't make a graf shari lechatchila. V'Mafilu Yisratze She'yishai Kach V'Le'yezenim Imkoyme Gam Kein Osa. And if you want it, that you won't move it, that will be also commissioned on the post like we discussed. Mutter, but if it's a clean kli, then if it's a dirty kli, then you're allowed to move it, because hainu af kodim shenismali letatlo v'davka kshu nosim bokim shivasa kvuasham. It's in a where it's fixed there. The mos because it's the kli itself was mos. For a graf shalrei, it was initially a graf shalrei. She'tir letatlo sil ashbam b'nei kvoidei. If it was already there and it was catching the thing, then it was already considered the graf shalrei. You never made it, and that would be a mutter kanal b'siman shin ches seif lamadal ayin sham. Okay.